God without man is still God. Man without God is nothing. Thank you again for joining me on Just Jesus. We'll be in Luke chapter 18 for a few minutes in our lesson today. Another parable by Jesus. Luke's gospel is full of them. This is one of the great reversal parables and great reversal themes in Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. Let's read that together and then we'll jump in.
And he told also this parable to some people who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. Two men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself: God, I thank you that I am not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing some distance away, was even unwilling to lift up his eyes to heaven, but was beating his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. I tell you, this man went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted.
This lesson, I preached it a few years ago. I entitled it Bad Guys Don't Always Wear Black Hats. And uh, sometimes they wear white hats. And that's the case with the religious leaders here. The religious leaders around Jesus, they didn't like Jesus. They weren't living right, and they were leading people astray. And so Jesus confronted them a lot, and as a result, they didn't care for him too much. And so eventually he was crucified. And so he told them a parable about two people, and one of them was a Pharisee. It's a parable, and the other one is a tax collector. And so this Pharisee, they're in the temple to pray, and the Pharisee stands up and he's praying. Jesus says in verse 11, praying thus to himself. Kind of like that's an indication that God's not really involved in this, and but he's talking to God, but God is not really involved in his prayer because of his heart. And God, I thank you. I'm not like other people. And he's just all pompous and arrogant. And then you have the tax collector in the back. He's beating his breast, can't lift up his head, saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. So he's just full of remorse and so on. And Jesus says in verse 14, I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself was going to be humbled. But if you humble yourself, everyone who humbles himself will be exalted. That's how it is with God. And so the arrogant, spiritually arrogant individuals don't cut it with God, and there's a great reason for that. The main one is that when we think about who God is, if we have any sort of arrogance in our heart after we think about who God is, there's something wrong. Because the reality is, when we realize who God is, that He's a holy God, a powerful God, a loving God, we are driven down on our knees and bow before him, that you are great and I am not. If you go to God and you say, God, I thank you, I'm not like, and you start comparing yourself to other people, etc., in prayer and in our relationship with God, a real key is don't compare ourselves to others. Compare ourselves to God. If we compare ourselves to God, we can always find somebody that's worse than us. I mean, you could grab Hitler if you have to, and but that's not the comparison for whether or not we're good or holy. The comparison is how do we compare to God? And compared to God, we're not holy. And so the tax collector in this parable, he pleases God because he acknowledges, I know who you are, God. You are holy and I'm a sinner, and I beg for mercy. That touches the heart of God. Let me give you a few sayings that I think are worth hearing. God without man is still God. Man without God is nothing. Second one is this: a mistake that makes you humble is better than an achievement that makes you arrogant. That's a pretty good one. A mistake that makes you humble is better than an achievement that makes you arrogant. Because when we become arrogant, especially spiritually arrogant, we become very ignorant. Arrogance makes a person ignorant. And the reason for that is because you shut off any learning, and obviously shows a lack of knowledge of who God is. And there's a saying, I believe it was by Martin Luther, who said, God made something out of nothing. If we admit that we are nothing, maybe God will make something of us. And I think that's a good, powerful point to be made. The other one is this. This one hurts a little bit. People. Think about the Pharisee and the tax collector here. People have gone down into hell, thanking God that they were not like other people. That's a bad one, right? People have gone down into hell, thanking God they were not like other people. In other words, key is in life: stay humble before God. I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you'll be with me for the next lesson on Just Jesus. Anytime I can help you with something spiritual, please contact me. Have a great day close to the Lord in humility.